Hey folks, today we're going to be talking about a new series of dev diaries that the Project Caesar EU5 team are going to start releasing every Friday, and Pavia has done this first one. I think he's doing all of them going forward. So we've got Johan for the main dev diaries every Wednesday, and then every Friday Pavia is going to be doing this Tinto Flavor series where he's going to talk over all the flavor that is coming to the game. He does say later on in this dev diary, we'll cover it now though, that the mission system, the way that a lot of flavor was brought into EU4, Imperator Rome, EU4, quite a lot of the Paradox games use those mission trees to bring a lot of flavor to content. He actually says later on in this dev diary, and we'll talk about it a little bit more then, but that isn't going to be the primary way of bringing flavor into this game. It is going to be used. He gives us a little bit of like a cryptic answer that Johan will give us more information about this in the future in the main dev diaries. So we'll talk about that when that does happen. But if you are reading through this, listening to me and thinking like, where's the mission trees? That is going to be covered in the future in some way. They have hinted towards it in the main dev diaries, but I just wanted to get that out the way now. So yeah, this is going to be the first one. In this dev diary, he's going to talk to us about the types of content and the guidelines they're using to show this kind of content in the game. So where we're going to see flavor brought into these different countries, different realms, and how that's going to be shown to us. So today, as I just said, they're not going to be showing us a specific country, though they will be doing that in the future. They are going to be talking about each element of the game where you will see this kind of content. And to begin with, you can see this massive list here. International organizations, events, advances, units, ships, buildings. And he's going to go through each one of these and give us an example that's already in the game now. So that is what this dev diary is going to be covering. So do follow along. And for each one, you'll see it on the screen. I'll leave a link as always to these in the description down below. You can actually click on the Tinto talks related to that thing. So if you're watching this and you're thinking like, what's an international organization? You can go to the dev diary. It will be a clickable link below. And then you can click on Tinto Talks 12, and that is where he discusses it. Or you can watch my video that covered that as well. Obviously the preferable thing to do, but you can go in and read about these if you're following along. Maybe this is the first dev diary coverage you've seen and you're wondering what we're talking about. You can click into each one and get a little bit more information. So the first one, as I've said, is international organizations. There are plenty of international organizations, both unique and generic. They may also appear throughout the game, either organically or by some game mechanic or scripted content. And the example is going to show off this one is the Guelphs. Probably mispronouncing that, but that is the first one. These are mostly the city-states or the small states in Italy that sided with the papal realms for most decisions in this time period. And you can see this is giving you different bonuses if you're the leader. All members of this organization get this, and then there are 19 members, and then a little bit of flavor at the bottom, just giving you more information. So the pro-papal states in this area, and that is what you're going to get if you're part of this IO. The next one is going to be situations. Situations are content creators that allow narrative content to affect different realms at the same time. They usually have some actions that can be performed in the situations panel, or that can be unlocked by the situation itself, e.g. through diplomatic or character-related actions. And they may also trigger other types of content like events or disasters. And for this one, I'm going to butcher the name of it, but Nambukucho Jedi? Look, just ignore that I tried to pronounce that. But anyway, this situation is based in Japan, and this will trigger in Japan in the first month of the game, dividing the country into two sides, one supporting the Northern Court and another supporting the Southern Court. This is again another example, and you get some flavor here about why this happened historically. The next one is disasters. Disasters are usually a type of negative content that impacts only one country. In Project Caesar, they get a separate panel in the UI that can be used to interact with them, although they will show them in future Tinto Flavor Dev Diaries. This was covered very recently in the Dev Diaries themselves, so we've known a little bit more about this recently. And you can see here, Crisis in the Huan Dynasty. This is a disaster. If you've played EU4, you kind of know how these disaster systems work, and it's kind of similar this time around. This was a unique disaster in China. This can happen multiple times during your playthrough and represents the fall and replacement of the Chinese dynasties. The next one is events. The humble event is the most common type of content present in the game, and they already have thousands of events scripted and implemented. There are two types, as in most Paradox games, random events and unique events. Of the second type, the most common is a dynamic historical event, which is also well known in other games. So these are the things you see in Crusader Kings, EU4, EU4, just these events that pop up, and you've got to make a decision based on that event. And the one they're going to show off here is invite German settlers, some awesome art as always, a little bit of information about them, and then 3 decisions. Do you want to welcome them, help them sell directly, or just get out of here? We don't want you in our lands. And this is a reoccurring event that can happen in countries with their capital in Eastern Europe. They have enacted a specific privileges for peasants, invite German settlers to portray the late medieval I'm not even going to try pronounce it. You have 3 options to deal with them, as we've already seen there. So again, a cool little event thing that can happen. And as Pavia says, they've got thousands of these already. I would imagine quite a lot of them are going to come from EU4, just kind of redone a little bit just to fit a little bit better. But they've got all of those, and then obviously more they're making to bulk it out even further. The next one is government reforms. Government reforms define the shape of a country, thus being very valuable flavor assets, especially the unique ones. It's also one of the ways they're going to use to hook permanent modifiers, as there aren't many sources of this in the game. Again, they're going to talk about this later on, because he does cover like, oh, there's a lot of modifiers in all of these. And I think we talked about that this week in the main Dev Diary video I did, that there's a lot of stats coming from different areas of the game. And he actually covers that later on, saying there's not many permanent modifiers. A lot of these modifiers are temporary, and that's how they're going to try get away from stat stacking and stuff like that. We'll see how successful they are. They say that for every game, and it never really works out, but we'll see if they manage it with this one. And you can see in this government reform, this is based in Anatolia, unjustified war on the same religion cost, all these different modifiers. This is all around the Turkish rule over Anatolia, and it also unlocks other interesting content, such as a unique succession law. So some of these can tie into other ones, as he mentioned earlier. The next one is laws and policies, and these are spread over 5 categories: admin, religious, socio-economic, estate, and military. And you may already know that each law has different policies you could pick one from, some of them being more generic and some unique ones. As it shows here, this was covered in Tinto Talks 18. I think it was covered later on as well in a little bit more detail. And you can see here military laws, order of chivalry, and then the modifiers that is going to give you, and the different options you could choose there, like Order of the Swan, Order of the Dragon, all these different options. And this one is a unique military law for the European countries. The Order of the Chivalry one, it will always unlock a unique policy which is country driven. So for instance, if we have the Castilian Order of the Band instituted by King Alfonso the Avenger in 1332, and obviously some other historical ones that were set up as well by people. The next one is estate privileges. There are several privileges that you can grant to the different estates. These might also interact with other forms of content, and it makes it key to select the right ones. So this is where we're going to get flavor around estate privileges, but then they might unlock other bonuses that are also flavor as well. So again, how these kind of all synergize together. This one is based in Venice. This is the Libro d'Oro. Is a starting privilege for the Venetian nobility. It gives them 5% estate satisfaction and 10% noble power, plus a couple of additional modifiers. It also triggers a reoccurring event that adds new noble dynasties to Venice, making the nobles even happier at a certain monetary cost. It might be costly to get this revoked, however. It does. It costs 100 stability. That's a lot of stability. So yeah, getting rid of this is going to be pretty difficult. The next type is advances. The humble advance is the second most common flavor content after events. There are plenty of unique advances, usually 1 to 3 per age in those countries with unique ones, plus specific regional advances, plus specific religious advances. This is kind of the nearest we get to like mission trees, but not really. But if you've seen the UI before, it looks kind of similar to how the mission tree UI generally looks, especially in HOI4. It looks very similar to like the HOI4 mission tree, if you've seen that and things. So you can see this one. This is one of the starting advances in Mali. Tells a legendary tale of its founder, Sundiata Keita, and you can see obviously army morale improve, and then it probably leads on to some events and things like that. So again, a cool system interacting there. The next one is Parliament. As part of the mechanics for the Parliament, we'll get agendas and issues. These can also be unique and adapted to the situations experienced by different countries. They talked a lot about this in the Parliament Dev Diary, that was 41, and they covered a few of these like the English Parliament stuff and things like that. But you can see here the Education Act, the modifiers that it can give. You lose some stability. This act is a Parliament issue available for Scotland if they embrace the Calvinist religion. As you may see, it impacts the societal value of the country and also unlocks a new unique policy for the education of the masses law. So this is Scottish specific. The next one is works of art. Again, a recent thing they talked about. There are plenty of scripted works of art at the start of the game, besides the randomly created ones, of course. This will make the game feel more immersive, as you'll be able to recognize a bunch of them, and they will have the effects described in the Tinto Talks. That was 37 if you want to go back and read about it. So these are all going to be generic works of art, but then like this one you can see here, there's going to be some specific work of art that actually happened in that year. If that culture exists still in the game, I guess you will see these historical ones appear as well, which again is pretty cool. They did show that off in that Tinto Talks as well. The next one is characters and artists. This covers a few things, as you can see. There are tons of historical characters, not only at the start of the game, but they will also appear throughout gameplay. Besides that, character traits and interactions are completely scriptable, making it easy to add new types as it happens through air selections. Thus, there are also a bunch of unique ones as well. And you can see here, this is the partition inheritance. This is a succession law that is specific. And this one is based around the HRE, about how the inheritance worked in the HRE. And that is why the HRE basically ended up so fragmented and things like that. This one does cover that. So that's pretty cool as well. The next one is buildings, as shown by Johan in Tinto Talks 9. And in the separate buildings dev diaries that they do publish every week. I will say I don't cover those on the channel because it is generally just a building and then a little bit of information about it. It is cool seeing the different buildings though. And if you haven't seen those, they are on the official forum, so you can go and read up and catch up on them. And there's going to be a bunch of historical buildings and flavor content coming in. And the one they're going to show off, a very famous one, Versailles itself, the production method, the building time, the building cost. So this obviously will give you a lot of bonuses if you build the Palace of Versailles. It's a pretty cool building to have by the looks of it. The next one is going to be units. This is one where I hope we do get a bunch of different units, get away from the more generic-ish EU4 style. It looks like we are going to get that as well. So we'll see, obviously, in the future. Besides the generic units that compose an army, there are also going to be quite a few unique ones that are, again, completely scriptable. They are usually available for an age, and afterwards, then a new unit type appears. It's up to the player to either upgrade them or keep them. So you can either keep them as they are or pay to upgrade them. And he's going to show off here the Elephant Cavalry, which looks pretty good, to be honest. The modifiers that you get, how well it fights, flanking ability, 200% flanking ability by those elephants. You'd think you'd see them coming, but I guess you don't. The elephants here are the Southeast Asia ones. As they mention, the African elephant was not employed for warfare during the time period of this game. So they won't be in the game because, you know, they are trying to keep it historically accurate where they can. The next one is going to be ships. Similar to units, there are unique types of ship that last for around an age. I think we did see this in Tinto Talks 24, the Catalan Galley, and it is slightly better than the generic one. So again, pretty good there. The next one is cabinet actions. This is one that we have had information here or there about, but a little bit more information about the flavor side of this. So certain nations have unique cabinet actions for various reasons. This is not a feature that they will use much, as they need to keep things balanced with the amount of actions that cabinets can do. So this isn't where we're going to see a bunch of content around here, a bunch of flavor around the cabinet actions, but there are going to be some specific examples that make sense. So one of the smaller areas that we're going to get flavor around. Sweden has a unique cabinet action at the start of the game, which helps the country to colonize the vast lands of the north and east, mostly inhabited by the Sami and Finnish population, and you can see the modifiers there that gives. I think that it does make sense again, that this is an area where they're not going to bloat out the cabinet actions. There's plenty of other areas where they can do special content. The next one is diplomatic features. All the diplomacy related features are also scriptable, which means they can have unique flavor added to them, besides all the generic actions, which are also scripted ones. So as you can see, I think they've really come to this game. They've learned a lot from previous games, and they've pretty much made every type of action, every bit of content scriptable, easily moddable, it sounds like, and a way they can quickly add flavor into all these systems, and they're not having to like gerrymander or like weirdly add things onto other systems. We don't want to get to EU4 basically, where there's like a million different systems interacting with each other. And what they've talked about earlier in Dev Diaries is they've built this with the idea of it all kind of synergizing together, being easy to make content for, and hopefully that does happen once the game is actually released. And as you can see, this is a cool diplomatic action you can have. This is the Demand Samanta status, which is a type of subject unique to countries in the Indian culture group. So this is kind of like having a vassal or something like that by the sounds of it. It's kind of their version of it. So this is different to other realms that wouldn't have the ability to do this. So that is pretty cool. I like the idea of that. The next one is religious features. Religious features are a mix of hard-coded and scripted features. The second allows them to add unique flavor that intersections specific countries with the religions that they historically worshipped. They're going to talk about the religious side of the game in future main Dev Diary talks, so that is something Johan's going to cover later in the year. So you can see here the Abadi religious school option. You're obviously not going to get this if you're a Catholic or something like that. So these are different areas where you are going to get these different content depending on which religion you are, and they're going to talk about more in the future. And with that, that is the end of the different types of content we're going to see and an example for each one. Do let me know what you think about those. I think this looks really cool, how they can add a bunch of stuff. And from what they've said in the Dev Diaries and even in some of the responses to questions, it sounds like they've got so much content. As he says, thousands and thousands of events already. And this game's probably at least a year away. So it's pretty cool to see how far they've got already. And then he ends the Dev Diary by talking about what I was saying at the beginning, modifier inflation. And as he basically says here, they've really tried to get away from having permanent modifiers A lot of the modifiers are like temporary modifiers or modifiers that don't interact with other modifiers. So this is how they're going to try prevent the modifier bloat that we see in every game. If you play Crusader Kings 3, you'll know that about every 6 months, they always say like, oh, I think modifier inflation's got too bad. We're going to try pare it back a bit. And then it always seems to get out of control again with the different systems they add. But it looks like here they're coming into it with the same idea. Hopefully they keep to it, because I think modifier stacking is one of the problems EU4 has. And they even say here at Paradox Tinto, the studio that's making this, that currently looks after EU4 as well, they have PTSD about the modifier stacking in the latest expansions and things like that. So it is good in a way that they've gone back kind of supporting EU4 and they've realized like, yeah, we need to make sure this doesn't happen in EU5. Are they going to learn? I think they will, just due to how much it has affected that game. But we will obviously see in the future. They can say this and then it might happen differently when the actual game comes out. But that is what he's talking about here. And then the second bit, again, talking about missions, just saying that Johan's going to talk about missions in the future, but they don't consider them the base flavor content for any country. So unlike EU4, where most of the flavor probably comes from mission trees, you do have the events and things, but I think a lot of players look at the missions as where the flavor comes in. They're saying here that isn't the case in EU5. That isn't where the flavor is going to come from mostly. It does open the door that I think we are going to get some version of missions. I might be wrong. I can't remember off the top of my head if they've talked about missions at all previously. But anyway, he does say Johan's going to talk about this more in the future. So we'll see. That covers both of those kind of major points, really, with how these work. And then really interestingly, he says next week, next Friday, to continue this series, they're going to talk about Florence. So we're going to see a lot of the specific content Florence is going to get. And then every week, it looks like they're going to talk about a different realm, a different, part of the game where there's a lot of flavor. So each week, we'll get something new. Let me know in the comments, which country are you most interested in hearing about? What kind of content do you want to see there? What kind of events and things like that do you want to bring to the game? And maybe, like I was saying, like units and things like that, where we're going to get some special flavor by the looks of it. But with that, that is the end of the video. And like I say, this is going to be every Friday. So every Friday, I'm going to cover it on the channel. So the new schedule, I guess, going forward is normal Dev Diaries on a Wednesday, and then the flavor Dev Diaries on a Friday. I imagine they're going to keep to that until the official announcement of the game. We'll see when that does happen this year. But anyway, hit that like button if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you are new here. I'm covering EU5 up to official announcement, launch and beyond. And I've covered all the Dev Diaries since the unofficial announcement. So if you are coming to this new, this is the first video, flavor EU5 caught your eye, and you've listened to it all the way through, do subscribe, but do go back and watch the previous ones. There will be a link in the description down below for the whole playlist if you want to watch through. As we've gone through quite a lot of these now, I think it's pretty much been a year since they started them. So there's been a lot of information out there. To be fair to Johan, Pavia, and the rest of the team, they have told us a lot. They have changed a lot. Again, if this is your first video, there's been a lot of things where we've given feedback and they've come back later on, a couple of months later, and said, yep, we've changed this. There was a recent Dev Diary where they pretty much changed an entire system just due to the feedback that we'd given. So it's really cool to see them do this. This is why they talked about this before it is EU5 and officially announced, or whatever they're going to call it. But yeah, it's cool to see. So anyway, we'll leave it there for today. I'll see you in the next one.